Hey everybody, welcome back to another video by Skully. So what I've got on the brain today is fixations and obsessions. So yeah, no beating around the bush here, I'm just getting straight to it. Because this is something that I think about a lot. I don't know how much other people think about it and or deal with it, but I feel like it's actually pretty common. The reason why I feel like this is so weird to talk about sometimes is because like everybody has hobbies, everybody has things they enjoy. It's like part of what makes us us, our hobbies, our interests, very, very normal. But when you get so really wrapped up in things that people don't always quite understand, that's kind of when it gets a little out there. Like, okay, somebody likes sports, somebody likes movies, somebody likes music, like all pretty typical things that most people can relate to. But, like, if you've ever had, like, for example, a TV show that you really like, and you get really emotionally invested into it, especially if there's a particular character that maybe you're rather fond of them, or there's somebody that's like really, really relatable because maybe they've been through very similar situations as you, or you just see a lot of yourself in that person, you tend to really, really get more emotionally invested than somebody else might. And again, I think that's fairly normal to some degree too. Cause like I mean, if you grow up watching certain movies or certain TV shows with characters and you're around the same age, going through a lot of the same life experiences as them, I feel like that's very normal to kind of really kind of put part of your heart in that person, especially if they seem similar to you, and you just I think that's very normal, especially when you kind of look up to them as maybe like a hero or somebody you want to be like. But that's kind of one of those things that like you can see how that might kind of escalate for some people. Like, okay, you know, it's somebody you like, or it's somebody you just really think they're really cool, but then there's just I don't know, sometimes it can get to a level where people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's all you talk about all the time. All you do is watch that show all the time. You've watched the same episode 100 times. You've watched all the seasons a million times. Like, aren't you going to move on to something else?" And that's kind of the level that I'm talking about, because I don't know how if people like how many people get that invested in something, or if it's like I don't know how common or uncommon it is, but seeing as how I've heard of other people like that, or maybe I've seen other people seem like they might have that kind of in common with somebody else, I feel like that's just kind of worth addressing. Because if you're somebody who you've noticed that in yourself or in a friend or something, it's like one of those things where it's like I don't really think it has to really be a huge matter of concern as long as it's appropriate, or that it's not like totally consuming your life, or if it's somebody who they love a character in a movie or TV show that's that maybe that's becoming to an obsessive level, like you don't want to start bothering that like actor or actress that plays that person, and you kind of see where I'm going with all of this. And maybe even if it's not a TV show or a movie or anything, it's just kind of more like, I don't know, that you just get so into cooking that you just do it all the time. And, that's a very beneficial hobby at first, but if you're literally spending so much time doing it that you're not really taking time for yourself and taking care of your needs, and you're really, really focused on, like, do people really like what you make for them? Or, oh my gosh, can I prepare that better? I don't think I did it very well this time. And you're really hard on yourself, and you really spend like copious amounts of time just really trying to make sure that recipe is really just like perfect. So yeah, when I talk about fixations and like obsessions, I'm kind of talking to a more extreme level than just having a hobby or interest in something that would otherwise be pretty typical. So there are certain things that I feel like this goes pretty hand in hand with. I mean, of course, people, they might hear something like that and they might think ADHD or they might think OCD. And I'm not even really getting into the labels necessarily. But people tend to kind of, their mind kind of starts to go that direction. But yeah, this is something that can be bothersome for some people, and it can actually be rather awkward sometimes, because it could just be like, again, a TV show you really like that you're passionate about, but then if you talk about it all the time, other people may not realize like why you're so focused on it, and oh my gosh, she's talking about that again, like why doesn't she just talk about something more normal like the weather, or some new band that's getting ready to tour here pretty soon, like get kind of more excited about something else. So, yeah, that can kind of be awkward in situations where, like, that, like, again, if it's a TV show, could be very, like, a sense of comfort for you, but for somebody else, they just may not get it. And sometimes it can just be that simple, where it's like, it's just something you really enjoy, but other people, they just don't get the hype to the same level you do, and then that can make you feel very isolated and very depressed, very misunderstood. And people may just think that you're just the person that talks about that one subject all the time, and then you may feel like that they're kind of estranging themselves from you because maybe they don't know how to tell you that, hey, you're talking about the same thing all the time. Like, you ever just want to talk about something else one of these days? So, part of it is kind of getting that habit of like, hey, you can talk about it sometimes, but if it's on your brain all the time, kind of time and place. So, again, if this is kind of becoming more of a habitual thing that's really kind of starting to cause some issues, so what exactly do you do about it? One of the things I found very helpful with this kind of topic, if you're somebody who experiences any of this, is that I found support groups to be very helpful. I mean, mental illness is one thing, but I just mean, support groups for mental illness, yes, but I meant more like fan-oriented groups where if there's a book you really like, and maybe you don't know a lot of people that read it, but it's one that you really, really enjoyed, and it's a series that you're a big fan of, you can join some groups where people talk about that book, and maybe if it's a very popular group where people update pretty often and talk about it pretty often, suddenly you can go from feeling so isolated in real life to actually having a place where you kind of fit in. And of course you don't want to spend all of your time in that group doing absolutely nothing else, but I mean, it's a good start. Like, it's an outlet where you can, if you really feel the urge to keep talking about this book, this activity, this subject, you can get it off your chest without feeling like you're annoying everybody else. So until you can maybe kind of get that to kind of dial down a little bit, you can kind of talk to other people that maybe they get this hobby of yours, and maybe you just kind of fangirl about it together, and oh my gosh, remember the part where this happened. So that way you can still have this hobby, and it's more contained, it's more appropriate. So I found that to be one of the really big things that helped if I ever felt like I was really getting involved with something that people were really just not getting into the way I was. Because for some things that can be very hard to find other people that share that same hobby. Another kind of really thing that I kind of found more helpful with this topic was, again, letting yourself do this to some degree, but trying to kind of like moderate it, where maybe you can think about it and talk about it every so often, but don't let it control your whole life. Because, like, remind yourself that you have other things that you really enjoy also, and that there's nothing wrong with having a hobby, being passionate about something, and having a really love for something, especially if it is like a book or movie, TV show. Like, if it's something that really, really got you through rough times in your life, it's very normal to have a very, like, attachment to whatever this was, because you feel like it's, if you were in a dark place, you feel like this was like the light at the end of your tunnel, and it got you out of this darkness that you were really in for so long. So there's nothing wrong with kind of like knowing that, but then also realizing that, like, you had other things that helped you too. I mean, you got yourself through those things. And sometimes it's easy, if you really are used to what you like and really kind of having a similar routine all the time, it's easy to get stuck in the same like 5 things all the time. So another thing that can kind of help is if you kind of start exploring other hobbies that you have also. Like, if there's a new movie that came out that you want to see, or another book that came out, or a friend of yours really talks about, like, cooking again, for example, and they really, want you to join a cooking club with them, or maybe they've invited you to go see some play that's going on later this week. Like, don't be afraid to try new things, because I actually made a video talking about how change is very difficult for some people. But once you kind of get yourself in the habit of doing new things, meeting new people, that your comfort zone kind of feels like it expands gradually. Like, instead of being in this little circle that you're afraid to step out of, you feel like the more you kind of get yourself involved in life and doing more activities, it's like that little circle starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And once you feel more comfortable, you can kind of, your comfort zone could actually include something like sports that maybe you didn't used to do a couple of years ago, but maybe you found one that you really liked that you do, like, with your friends. Like, maybe you play rugby on the weekends, and now suddenly you're more comfortable doing that, and you weren't a couple years ago. So, if you feel like you're constantly being criticized, or you just feel really kind of isolated for being overly passionate about things and really kind of fixating on things a lot. I wouldn't give yourself a hard time about that, because sometimes you don't always realize that if you constantly have things on your mind, I mean, you may know it's a little abnormal, but you may not realize to what level exactly it's happening until somebody brings it to your attention, and that can be really embarrassing, that can be really degrading. More than likely, we all have something we're really passionate about. I just think it's on the intensity is different based on the person. Like, I'm probably said a million times how things exist on a spectrum, but they really do for everybody, because everybody is different in their own special way. So just know in your heart that, you know, your love for a certain story, movie, whatever you like, it's perfectly normal to have that stuff and to look up to these things, especially if they got you through dark times. But also realize that you're also a source of your own happiness. So even though it's normal to base happiness on fictional things, also know that you're also part of your own happiness. So don't be afraid to kind of expand your horizons and live life, and know that you can have your hobbies, but you can also expand your horizons and learn to incorporate new hobbies, new habits, and kind of everything can kind of coexist in your head and make you happy. So until then, have a great day, guys.